Lose it.
Recording in progress.
Progress. The American. Okay. So I don't know if I should intro or do you want to intro?
You know what? I can give it my best.
Oh, you do the intro and then we can just go from there.
Well, I'm Scotty Brizzle, and I've been doing the carnivore diet for about 2 and a bit years now, just to try and help with some autoimmune issues that I've had for quite some time that got really bad in my sort of mid-20s. And yeah, after trying sort of diet after diet, naturopathy route, GP specialists, spending so much money. It got to a point where I just had to hit the opt out button to figure it out on my own. And I who would have thought eating only meat was an option?
I
You
know.
know? So then I got to a point where I'm like, why didn't people tell me this? And why don't people hear this more? So then I started creating content surrounding carnivore diet, but also the corruption of our medical and food system. And yeah, the ball's just been rolling. I've sort of immersed myself in this community of carnivores and people just trying to decentralize their health, their food, lifestyles. And yeah, it's been like, I actually have a reference point of how good I can feel. And people compliment you, say, oh, you look good, you're great, you're glowing, and what's your secret? And I say, I eat only meat. They're like, oh, what is wrong? Are you I don't think that's safe. Are you okay? It's so interesting. But yeah, so I just want to focus on making content and just sort of maybe educating people in that sense if they haven't heard of this before. So yeah.
Spreading the good word. It's so funny that when they can see with their eyes and they'll tell you what they're experiencing in you look great, what's happening, and then when you tell them, and just like the full 360 that people will do on what they've just said to you, and it's like, well, you're saying I look good, you're saying my skin's better, I'm vibrant, I'm glowing, I'm lean, but then the minute that you tell them, they're like, oh no, how's your cholesterol? Like, looking with our eyes has become something that I feel like in a lot of ways, not just with food, but in heaps of different ways with society, we've stopped believing what we see.
Yeah.
We need a piece of research to believe something, or we need, I was talking about this morning, I don't cite studies. I don't take any kind of confidence out of or validity from studies, because being at university, I learned how many impacting factors can affect a piece of research that you're trying to control and manage. And so studies don't really mean much. Like it's about what you see, what you experience. And when I went through this myself, because I came across carnivore kind of accidentally. Have you heard my story of how I found carnivore?
Briefly, but please go again.
Yeah, so long story short, my boyfriend was telling me about the carnivore way of eating, and I had been paleo, which is just meat and vegetables, for about 15 or so years, maybe longer. So I hadn't eaten any processed foods or grains or anything like that for ages anyway. So for me, it wasn't that big a transition. And so, but I thought, I'm eating the best way possible. I'm eating paleo, it's ancestral, great. Not really thinking or looking at the fact that those things didn't exist, or we didn't have the exposure or the accessibility to those food things in the past. I still, in my brain, was like, this is real, this is grown on the earth, it must be good for me.
This is healthy.
Yeah, this must be healthy.
Mm.
And he was working out of London, and for like 4 days a week, and then back for the weekend for 3 days. And he did it while he was away. And each week he got back, he just looked better and better. And his psoriasis went away, and his insomnia, which was literally so bad, started improving. And all these things that aren't really meant to improve started improving. And so I had to look at it, and I was like, I really didn't want to, because I've got my degree in sports, and I had taught people for a really long time that vegetables are essential, that we need to eat a rainbow of colors of the rainbow, and and that we were getting something positive from eating these ways. So yeah, when I saw the changes, and again, this was just with my own eyes, this wasn't what I had been told or someone had convinced me. It's just what I experienced was, oh my God, he looks amazing. What is going on? Because all he's done is cut out vegetables. So it was a bit of like a, it goes against what we have been conditioned to experience, that you've got to eat 5 fruit and veg a day, and stuff that I had been taught growing up in New Zealand about fruit and vegetables being good for me. So I finally decided to take the plunge, and when I looked into the bit of research that he was trying to get me to look at, it was Professor Bart Kay. And Professor K was actually one of my teachers at university.
Oh, what a privilege.
So I've known him since I was like 18. Like,
wow,
hilarious. But
that's so cool.
I know, it's so funny because he was saying, my boyfriend was saying to me, you've got to check out this guy. He's a scientist. He's super, super like switched on. He's a Kiwi guy, and he's got a really bad potty mouth, just like you. I think you'd like really like him. And I was like, okay. So he sends me this video of Bart, and I was like, I know him. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Bart. That was my professor at uni. And he was like, oh my God. He's like fanboying over him. Oh my God. Oh, do you think he'll know? Do you think he'll remember you? And I'm like, yeah. Of course he will. Of course he will. So that was kind of how I got into carnivore crazy, and
wow.
got in contact with Bart. Obviously, Bart did my thesis at university, so he was my main mentor through all my research and all the bits. So I knew him pretty well and got back into touch, and that was when I was obviously living in the UK. And that kind of just opened the door for me, because I was so closed off to believing that vegetables could be causing me harm that I was dogmatic about it. I was like, no, I need vegetables, and I need nuts and seeds, and I need these things. And I've been giving them to my children, and I've been, telling all my clients to eat these things. And I've been asking them to do really stupid things like peeling the skin off their chicken and throwing it in the rubbish and stuff. That's what I used to make my clients do back in the day.
Yeah.
Just all the crazy loony things. And so to look at it, it was confronting, like, massively.
Well, this is all we get taught, and like vegetarianism or veganism is apparently the way, and what I soon learned was that it all come from sanitarium and the Seventh-day Adventists and the protege of Kellogg's and all these sorts of things, and how they've influenced, our health institutions, doctors, the textbooks, and it leads up to now, and we're still getting drip fed this information that vegetarianism is the pinnacle of health. But you think, well, how can that be when I look? So I was the same. I was once veggie, and it wasn't for very long. I've always been a meat eater, but I was also scared of red meat because I thought it was going to give me, I thought it was going to give me cancer. I had issues with fat absorption. I had SIBO, and so I couldn't absorb fat. So I thought fat was the problem. So I'd be having digestive enzymes and supplements galore. And so I thought this surely couldn't be the way, because I'm obviously my body's rejecting fat. And it wasn't until like I was chatting to Anthony Chafee, and he was saying, like, you just got to get rid of the digestive enzymes. But I'm like, how's that? That's not going to work for me, man, because I can't digest fat. But as soon as I got rid of all the supplements, all the digestive enzymes, and stuck to a strict carnivore diet, everything balanced out. And it took some time because I was on proton pump inhibitors for years. Yeah. And so that ruined a lot of my bile production, and obviously producing these digestive enzymes, right?
Yeah.
And so I had, like we were saying, I had to see it to believe it, to know that carnivore was, because even when I started to feel good, I'm like, sure, there's going to be a catch. There's got to be a catch. Like I'm only, because I was planning to only do it for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And after that 3 months, I was going to introduce other foods. And I remember after that 3 months, I was feeling amazing. And I thought, I'll introduce some healthy foods. And I had some avocado sushi and a coconut water. not even that much. And the next day, joint inflammation, gut distress, my skin even flared up. And I'm like, there's something going on here. And that was like the big calling for me, even though like I sort of knew deep down, I just still couldn't quite believe it until I experienced these reactions overnight. And yeah, so it's one of those things.
Ingrained in us, though, isn't it? It's so deeply set in us that these things are needed and required, and if we don't give them to our children, if we don't give them to ourselves, if we don't, that we are not going to be healthy, that we're not going to thrive, that we're going to end up with some kind of health problems. And even if we, like you said, can see and experience it with our own eyes, we still are like, hang on, is this right? Am I, going to end up with scurvy?
And that's the question you get all the time, right? How don't you have, why aren't you getting scurvy, or where's vitamin C coming from? And then you learn about how carbohydrates sort of like you've got to have more vitamins, because it's like I don't know the science, like I'm just a layperson, but but to realize like carbohydrates interfere with a lot of nutrients absorption. And and even like, because I went hard on the organs to start with, because I thought I was going to have vitamin deficiencies, but I think I went a little bit too far, and I started to feel rubbish. I just felt like crap because I was eating like vast amounts of liver every day.
Yeah.
And so to pull back from that, I'm like, oh, maybe carnivore is not the way. But then I pulled back from the organs and I started to feel good again. I'm like, oh, okay, right. It's I don't need to supersize myself with all these nutrients and vitamins that I think I need to. It's actually quite simple just to eat a steak and you're getting everything you need to in the most bioavailable form.
I love that part. That's the part that for me just makes it so clear. Like if nature could not give you a more clear indicator of what we are designed to eat and absorb, it is that we can get every single thing that we need from one piece of meat alone. Oh, it's just gorgeous. And so it just makes you go, oh yeah. And then you start thinking about animals and how they live and what, how predominantly they will only have one fuel source as well, like one species that they will. And then there's humans who have no idea what to eat. And they're so confused. Like we've become so out of touch with ourselves. So this for me was a real coming home to myself, even though I didn't know about it. And I was the same as you. I had gone, okay, I'll do 3 months because I want to see what this does. And then once I've done it, I'm going to introduce other things. And then the change was so dramatic. Have you seen my photos from that?
I don't think I have, no.
So the dramatic change in my body comp, in some of the ways that things that healed, like I've got 3 baby girls and I had a lot of skin stretch, as you can imagine, from going through 3 pregnancies. So I had a lot of skin and stretch marks and stuff and damage to the tissue on my abdomen. And I also had like some wrinkles, and I had really deep, like I'm very expressive with my face. So I had these were really deep lines that when I relaxed my face, it was like I had lines in my forehead.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Botox girl. I don't touch my face. I've never done I've had one facial my whole life. Like I'm not one of those types of girls. And so when these things started to heal and improve, I was like, what the hell? Like, how is that? How is that from cutting vegetables of all things? How is this impacting so greatly? The skin on my stomach started to tighten. The stretch marks started to fade. Like things that, are not really meant to regenerate started to.
Yeah.
So as I went along, I was just like, I would be a fucking idiot if I ever ate vegetables again. Like,
yeah.
So I was like, well, after the 3 months, I was like, okay, well, this is just now how I eat.
This is it.
Yep.
This is it. And 3 months is a good solid time to get a reference point of how good you can actually feel. And it was funny that I was treating it as a means to an end. Like carnivore is just going to be able to get me to be able to eat all of this shit food that I used to enjoy back in the day. But it's like, it was so foolish. But all it took was a sushi roll to solidify
Yeah.
that decision for me.
Mm.
But like you were saying, it's all these little things that you don't really think of that get better, like things you don't even think of, like a nagging little pain in the knee or the back, or things like I had vitiligo, not to an extreme extent, but I had vitiligo, and even that started, the pigment started to fill back in, and I was like, I thought that wasn't supposed to
Yeah.
happen, and teeth sensitivity, like
Yeah.
my teeth weren't as sensitive as they used to be. I don't know, my hair and nails grow faster. But there's all these little things, and you're like, wow, how can this be? Because I've got a bone disorder as well, and osteochondritis dissecans, and I've had that problem since birth, and I had knee pain just constantly, and I got used to just having knee pain. And I've had multiple surgeries on it to try and correct it. And 3 months after carnivore, one day I was just like, wait a second, I don't have knee pain anymore. Like, it's not like, this has never ever happened in my entire life. Like, how can this be? And you've got to see it to believe it. That's the only way to do it. You've got to experiment with it to find out.
Yeah. I love hearing people's stories too. Like, it literally makes me involuntarily so happy to hear people's changes, because I thought I was a very good trainer. I had my degree in sports. I trained with lots of top people, and I thought I was very good at what I did. And then to know that most of what I'd been teaching people for the main part of my career was wrong and
Oh,
was actually doing them harm. And
mm,
I'd given awful advice like throwing out fats and increasing carbohydrates and stuff. Like, you just have to look back on it and just go, oh my goodness, like, this is, and it's understanding why. Like, I know why I wanted to help people, and with what the knowledge that I had then, um, and just how much resistance there is to trying something new. I was the same. Like, I think people need to know that it's not like people that have gone carnivore believed it straight away either. Everyone that kind of got to this point was looking to feel better for themselves, because
mm.
they tried like heaps of different things. Like you said, you tried so many different things to make yourself healthy and well and optimal. And it wasn't like you thought this was the holy grail. It was more like, oh my God, okay, well, this is the last thing I've got to try.
My back's against the wall.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then when you notice that that knee pain is gone suddenly, and it's funny because your awareness will go away, you kind of forget that you had it. Then you go, oh, I used to suffer from such and such really badly, and now it's just not there anymore. And then obviously understanding how we have been not only conditioned, but we've been purposely taught misinformation.
Mhm.
I hate the word misinformation, but you know what I mean. The stuff that even Bart Kay was teaching when I was at school, he didn't have control over. So he was having, butting heads with some of the whatever curriculum, the administrative curriculum people, because
Yeah.
he's like, well, this is full, and I'm still
Mhm.
having to teach this, and he didn't want to do that. And
Oh, that's so hard.
it's so hard because I got my degree in sport, right? Which is up there on the wall, and it means nothing. I mean, all it shows is that I committed to a period of time, and that I could, produce certain levels of, work. But so much of what I learned, I've had to literally pull apart.
Oh,
So much I've had to let go of and really humbly go, okay, that's not true, and that's not true. And because I spouted it like really confidently, like gospel, and my innate being since I was born has been to help people. Like, I wanted to be a surgeon, or I wanted to be a doctor. Like, I always wanted to help people in some kind of something to do with anatomy and physiology. Like, I was a weird girl that used to get my mum to buy me hearts from the butcher, and I'd sit and cut them up and look at the valves and look at all the vessels.
wow.
I was just interested in the human body. So I wanted to help. And then learning that, you've been taught this degree and stuff, and you think you know all the things, and you're trying to help people. I think where it goes wrong is that the client or the patient can feel that you want to help them. They can feel that you're confident in delivering the information that you know, and they trust you, and that's valid. But this
Yeah.
the problem is because of what I've been taught from higher up is rubbish. It's been filtrated through people that do want to help, that do believe that what they're doing is the right thing, and you can feel that. So people trusted me and did what I said, and because they could feel that there was truth in me wanting to help. But the problem being is the information has come from so much higher up, because I
Yeah.
get that all the time. I'm like, people will say to me, but I know this person wants to help me, and I'm like, yes they do. It's not that it's being like everyone's out to get you.
Mhm.
It's that they've been told things that, you know, sadly, from, like you said, Kellogg's and the different organizations that have filtrated this stuff through. It's being delivered by people that care and love and want to help, but the information is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I experienced jumping from like GP to specialist. And like my last hope was going to this specialist in Byron Bay. And I'm like, well, Byron Bay's, you know, it's just up the road. It's got to definitely have some element of you know, listening to me, being in touch with your body. Because I was going through some extreme gut issues. Yeah, like I was debilitated with the issues I had. I got down to like 48 kilos. I was like wasting away. Yeah. And it was still a mystery of what I had, because I didn't stick around to find out. It was just IBS diagnosis or IBD, suspected Crohn's and all this sort of stuff, but I didn't stick around. But that was the final straw, where I was telling this doctor all the stuff I was going through, and the recommendations he was giving me is just, yeah, gluten-free, dairy-free, have these probiotics, have this supplement stack, and just do what you can. And I remember I was sitting in his office, and it was just this moment of like, oh, I've got to take responsibility for this. There's just absolutely no way any of these people, no matter what intentions they have, are going to be able to help me. And that moment was one of the most empowering moments I can remember. It was also scary to know that I've got to figure this out on my own, but it took that to the point of like, no one's going to save you. You're the only one that can save you here.
Yeah.
And all these, like, because I would research all these supplements so specifically to try and figure out, okay, if I did some quercetin with vitamin C and then some berberine, and I'll chuck some resveratrol in there, and some
Oh my
NMN,
God.
and so it ended up being this like I was overcomplicating it, and all I had to do was take everything away and just have a piece of steak on a plate, and that was the so it was a pretty easy resolution, but I was just
I think
confused.
the complication, the confusion is on purpose. Like,
Yeah,
I was the same as you. I went vegetarian, but I did it for a whole bloody year, and I got
yeah,
so sick, so
yeah,
sick. The
yeah,
same as you, they thought I had Paget's disease. Thought I had Crohn's disease. They made me gluten free. I had cameras up and in and out and la la, and all the investigations because they couldn't work out why I was so ill.
mm,
I've been sick from birth. My mother took a ton of antibiotics when I was even just when she was pregnant with me. And then I was born covered in eczema head to toe. Like, I was like a red rashy baby from my whole
wow,
body. And I was in ICU for a period of time because I couldn't grow and I wasn't thriving. And it was like from birth, I was looking to be okay. Like, I just wanted to feel well. And I felt like it was, like you said, it was like an operation. I needed to put all the pieces of the pie together in this specific order for me to feel any kind of okay. And sure, when I went gluten free, some things improved. And then when I took it further and went paleo and cut out any processed foods and carbohydrates, it got better again. And so I kept thinking that what I was doing was the right thing because I could see my health improving. So I was like, yeah, this must be it. This is it. This is it. And, you know, you keep thinking. And like you said, until you've reached full health, you don't even know what that feels like.
yeah, yeah,
And when you're there, you're like, oh my God, this is just how it feels just to have a digestive system that can absorb and that I can go to the toilet like a normal human. Because that's the thing, too. I thought that the way that I went to the toilet was normal.
mm-hmm.
I thought that that was just because, you know, we don't talk about our poos that frequently with our friends. Like, you don't have these conversations. And so I didn't know how bad I was either, because I had nothing to compare to but a lifetime of sickness and illness.
Oh, exactly. Like I remember when I first started trying the carnivore, and I was reading a carnivore diet, that people were saying you're going to have carnivore diarrhea for a couple of weeks. And I said, is that the worst? Because I've had diarrhea for about a year now. And if that's like, I'm an expert at dealing with diarrhea. So bring it on, you know? And, and this was like eating high fibrous foods, like,
Oh,
you know, plant-based. And this was apparently the thing to bulk up my stools. And I was taking Metamucil capsules.
oh,
Um, yeah, I know. It was so,
oh.
I look back on doing all this sort of stuff, and it was absolutely dreadful. And it only made me worse doing all this sort of stuff. But I was listening to all the things that I should be doing. And sure, I had the biblical carnivore diarrhea for a couple of weeks, but after that, everything normalized. And I'm like, oh, okay, we don't need fiber in our diet. I didn't need to be taking all these probiotics and supplements to be bulking up my stool. How can I have normal poos when I'm not having fiber? Like, this doesn't make sense, you know?
It is crazy, isn't it? Like literally everything that we've been told is backwards. I used to tell my clients that, like, I remember one of my girls, she was an Indian woman in London, and she would go like twice a day. And I thought she was so healthy. I was like, look at your amazing digestive system, go to the toilet twice a day. Like, it's just so backwards, because this is what, you know, we've been taught and believe. I didn't have the diarrhea that everybody got with carnivore, because I did it very gradually. So for about a year before I went full strict, I just started doing the minimum level. So if you are new to carnivore, if this is your first experience even listening to carnivore, and you're wondering what steps to take next, the very simple first steps you can take is to change the ratios of your food and get rid of anything processed. So number one, no processed foods. So that's all your bread, crackers, seed oils, anything processed, any sugar, get rid of it. Step number one. And then you want to get rid of the most poisonous plants, right? Which are spinach and nuts and seeds and rhubarb and kale and, you know, all of that family, all the deadly nightshade family. That's your potatoes, your eggplant, your tomatoes. Get rid of all of your poisonous plants, and then just work on your ratios. So bump up your fats and your meat products, and bring your plants down, and just slowly do this. So that is step number one. That is literally, so I get people that are like, I just need one little step forward. And sometimes it's just a little piece at a time. For me, I did it for like a year before I went all in. And that was in January 22 that I did the 90-day carnivore challenge with Professor K. But I've been heavy meat based for a year. And I did that for multiple reasons. I was pregnant. So I was going through some already other, wouldn't call them health conditions, but I was dealing with multiple faceted things going on in my health. So I didn't just jump straight in. And I think that was good for me, because by the time that I went strict in January 22, I was only eating the real low poison plants, so low oxalate plants. So, you know, your iceberg lettuce, your pickles, a little bit of, you know, that kind of low plant toxins. So I didn't believe that going strict was going to do much. I just did it for shits and giggles. Like, I was like, let's just see what this even does. I'm only eating low poison plants. You know, it's not going to make a difference. I'll just do the 90 days to say that I've done the 90 days and have a little like impact, look at the impact, and then I'll go back to eating the pickles and the low oxalate vegetables. And then just the change was so dramatic, and it was so rapid. And, you know, even just the body recomp thing, where I could see lines and dips in my arms and my legs that I'd never seen in my life. And it wasn't because I was thin or fat. Like, I have been smaller in weight and less body fat and percentage, but I still couldn't see these lines or definitions.
Yeah.
Not until I went carnivore.
Yeah. I I had a similar experience where I did Paul Saladino's animal-based method before I went strict carnivore.
Yeah.
And so I was having fruit, honey, raw dairy, and meat. And I
Yeah.
did that about a year before I went strict carnivore. But I could just feel I was, because I was still having symptom flare-ups, where that was skin stuff or a lot of like even histamine issues and that, and the irritability and the gross feeling that comes with you know, a histamine overload in your system. I I didn't think it was gonna. I thought this was just it, 'cause that was the reference point. But then, like, I think it was just 2 weeks after cutting out fruit and honey, dramatic change. And also, all these cravings are because I'd be a brownie or ice cream a day kind of guy back in the day, and those little thoughts stay in there, you know. And even though I was having only fruit and honey, that the sugar that I was eating was still causing me to think about these foods.
Yeah.
And then after the 2 weeks after I cut it all out, those cravings and those thoughts just disappeared. And now I can walk past a bakery, smell a croissant or look at a brownie, and I don't even bat an eyelid because my body's like, that's not food. It's not even an option.
Yeah. And how freeing is that, right? Like, for people that have kind of gone on our types of journeys, I I was always restricting myself, you know, and being a girl, I never finished my plate. I never ate to when I was full. I taught myself all these terrible ways of being in the world. And then to learn that you can actually eat as much as you want of the right food and it's not going to have an impact on you in a negative way. It's quite a lot to get your head around, isn't it? Like,
Mm, yeah.
no. And I remember when I did the priming. Did you prime?
How do you mean?
So with priming, it's a usually it's 2 weeks, and what you're doing is you're eating 3 times a day, and you eat as much as you can.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You stuff yourself. Now it only works if you're eating animal. If you're eating carbohydrates, it doesn't work at all. But
Doesn't
if you're
work. Yeah.
eating just meat and animal fats and stuff, and so for 2 weeks, I did that. And that the reason for priming essentially is to get a cellular backlog of nutrients and energy. Okay? Because a lot of people are in quite a depleted state at a cellular level. So the
Mhm.
idea of priming is to pack your cells full of nutrients so that going forward, if you want to do, you know, some extended fasting, or if you're looking for autophagy responses, or you're doing some protocol specifically for healing, that you have a backlog of nutrients to be able to do so.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, I'll do it properly. I'll do it all the way. And I did the priming, and it was so hard. Like, it was so hard to eat until I was full because I
Yeah.
taught myself literally the opposing for most of my life.
Mm.
And I remember even then thinking, oh my God, I'm going to blow up, because you've taught yourself that how much you eat is more important than what we eat.
Mm.
And it's the complete polar opposite. And so anyway, for those 2 weeks, I ate 3 meals a day till I literally felt sick, and then ate a bit more. Like, it was not enjoyable. It was probably my hardest part of carnivore that I've done so far.
Yeah.
And I lost 4 kgs. It just like fell off me. And so my brain is like having to recalibrate itself. Like, hang on a minute, you're stuffing yourself. You feel so sick. You're eating so much, and you've just lost 4 kilos. Like,
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is a revamp of what we think and believe, isn't it, on such a big level?
Yeah. And that is a big thing. So I've helped a few friends just try carnivore out. And in the first 2 weeks, they just like, I cannot eat any more meat. Like, this is crazy. I'm like, you just got to push through it. Like, eat till you're full. Don't go to a point where it's like you're starving. It's like, well, you haven't had enough. Make sure you're eating enough fat, all this sort of stuff. But I promise them, like, just give it a month. You'll be craving so you'll have breakfast, you'll have a steak. By dinner time, you'll be craving another steak. And they didn't believe me until it got to that point. And because that's one of the biggest questions people say, don't you get sick of eating only steak? And it's like, hell no. There's absolutely no way. And that's, oh, why don't you mix it up with like chicken? I'm like, well, chicken reacts with me.
I'm chicken's pointless in my brain. I'm like,
But
nah.
there's no point. I don't want to eat this weak feathery bird. Like,
Yeah.
give me some red meat.
I love beef is like my main man. I love beef. It's my
Oh,
issue.
it's
I did lion for a little bit. I think I did 4 or 5 months lion diet last year. Like
mhm.
I run really well off beef and I love beef. If
Yeah,
I had something else now, I feel like it just doesn't hit the same way. Like
yeah,
had something else, I'll still be hungry if I haven't had beef. So
yeah. I don't know anyone that has healed themselves with chicken or, I don't know anyone that's healed themselves on the carnivore diet doing that. Like, I know a lot of a lot of people say chicken's my favorite food. I'm like, okay, yeah, have some chicken, but prioritize red meat and you'll start to wean out chicken. And so my friend, he said that I'll never wean out chicken. Then he got to a point and he's like, I think chicken reacts with me. He went from eating it all the time to realizing he thinks it's causing him symptom flare-ups, and so I think red meat just it shows you the way. It clears all the bullshit. It's quite fascinating that ruminant. It makes sense with ruminant animals,
yeah.
but yeah, like I don't. And even hearing
Explain that for people that don't know why ruminant animals are more appropriate for us to eat or the toxicity level of their flesh.
sorry, say that again.
You're like, oh, say it faster. No, I was going to say for people that don't know about why ruminant animals have less responses, for example, for histamine or reactions like that,
Mm.
than say chicken or pork.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Well, it's I guess it's the difference between like so you've got a single chambered stomach animal. It accumulates all the soy, the corn, the crap into its fat. But cows, even if it's grain fed, you can still heal yourself, right? Because it goes through the multi-chambered stomachs and they break it down over and over and over. It's like the I don't know. They're pretty actually amazing, turning grass into like a superfood for us
Yeah.
in meat. But I'm sure you can explain it a lot better than
No,
that.
you hit the nail on the head. Like people go, well, why? What's the deal? And it is just like you said, it's the filtration system. With
Mm,
pigs and chickens, they have one. They have one stomach, whereas cows have four. So they're going to 4 times that filtration system, which means that what they're eating and how that gets transformed into either the flesh or the fat on that animal is going to be less toxic going through 4 filtration systems. So yeah,
yeah,
that people can still have sensitivities when eating pork or chicken, especially depending on what that chicken or what that pork is, what that pig is being fed.
yeah,
If it's an inappropriate diet like grains for pigs that they use to fatten them up, that's going to create a lot of toxicity in the fat and the flesh of the animal.
and it makes sense. Like if you react to soy, what do you think a pig eating soy is gonna like? It's you're eating what that animal is eating. Like it makes up their body, their cells. It just makes total sense. But yeah, I don't know. But the funny thing with me, because I mostly do lion diet. I'll try like chicken just to see how it goes every maybe 6 months or something, and then I'm severely let down. So I do love chicken wings. But yeah, like experimenting with these different foods, like I don't know. There's a point where I so have you had much venison and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a different feeling,
Mm,
right? It's a different feeling. Like I feel like I need to add more butter or fat
definitely.
to something like venison. But
Yeah.
it is a completely different feeling, and I don't even know how to explain it properly, but it's almost like a spiritual feeling, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
Having red meat, ruminant animals, especially something that's never seen a human before, like a deer out in the wild. Um, it nourishes you so much better. But also, I'm so sensitive that if I have grain, so if I go to the butcher and because they can pretty much write anything on there, if it's grass fed, they can write grass fed, and even though it's 100 days grain finished, they'll still put it as grass fed, right? So
Yeah.
I've bought meat from the butcher, and because I'm so sensitive, I'll eat grain fed beef, and I'll have an immune response. And I'm like, how does that happen? But then I hear how other people, Dr. Baker has said many times that people have healed themselves on McDonald's burger patties,
Yeah.
of all things.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show like the healing power of the red meat itself, especially like, you know, beef. But I guess some people can't go to that extent if they've got super, you know, if they're quite sensitive. But it's amazing that people can heal themselves on burger patties from McDonald's of all things, you know? Like
It's so good. A few things were jumping around in my brain as you were talking there, and like, you know, you talking about how we almost absorb differently. Like, I feel that way, and when you were like, I don't know how to explain it, I imagine like a fly being eaten by a spider, and it just kind of sucks everything out and just leaves the shell. Like, that's
yeah.
how I feel when I eat meat. I feel like I'm exactly, and it is this like full body experience of like, you can feel yourself being nourished at a level that isn't just fullness in your stomach. It is spiritual level. It's
It
quite
really
amazing.
is.
And my
Yeah.
kids have it too, especially with like if they're having a stew, they'll be like, oh, and they can feel their body just, you know, absorbing the goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a really beautiful thing because we are meant to be in touch with nature. We are meant to be species specifically eating certain things. And the more that we get close to and in touch with how we were meant to live before society and buildings and lighting and artificial everything's, the healthier we become. And it's
Yeah.
really simple.
Yeah.
If we take away all the noise and all the confusion, as I said, I believe it's been done on purpose so that we can just get back to human thriving. And it should be very simple.
Yeah, perfectly said. And I think we knew this as children. You know, I as a kid, I
Yeah.
knew to be barefoot out climbing trees in the sunshine. I knew I hated vegetables, even though my parents thought it was the right thing to do. So they'd try and force me to eat vegetables and that. And I've been working on a video talking about plant defense chemicals and how children are much more sensitive to bitterness and foods that are bitter, which is can be an indicator of toxic foods, because we've as children we've got more taste buds than adults. And yeah, not to mention adults, it's not like we love eating boiled potatoes. No, we love deep frying, chucking salt and sauces on potato to be able to eat it, you know, because a lot of these foods and no one's going to be eating spinach just from the bag. It's like, no, you're going to put dressing on it and all that sort of stuff, you know, like that's the only way we eat these disgusting foods. But as a child,
Yeah,
you know,
we do.
and
It's desensitized out of us, isn't it? It's like conditioned out of us right from
yeah,
our parents, because we don't think our parents are trying to harm us. It's the same thing I was talking about before. It's like, who is it being delivered by? And usually the person delivering it does want the best for you, but they just don't know enough to be delivering that thing.
that's right. Yeah. And it's the intelligence of the body. It's like a kid spitting out some beans or peas or something. That's an evolutionary response to be like, okay, wait a second. This is toxic. This is bitter because it's not going to be good for my body. But you watch these videos of say a young child or a toddler eating their first steak or something, like chewing on a bit of meat, and the joy in their face and the fats and the protein, you know, you can tell that's what they want. But here they are throwing their Brussels sprouts away because it's garbage. They know.
Yeah, they do. They so do. My daughter is almost 4 and she is carnivore. So she has been since day dot.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. I'm so like in I'm so grateful that I learned all of this before she came. And also that I had the understanding, the knowledge, and the conviction to hold strong, because I got fought back like bloody everybody
Oh,
by
I
not.
could imagine.
Yeah, I got like family and friends having goes at me. I had the hospital threaten to involve the police. I had like, yeah, it was scary. It's scary, but I had the depth of understanding, knowledge, and the conviction to walk through it, and I have. And now it's great and it's fine and stuff. But there were some really icky parts of that where I was being really judged and scrutinized for how I was raising and caring for my children, but I knew and I know 100-fold that I had done the right thing by them, and that that little girl is going to grow up with the best possible start to her life and not
Yeah.
have to go through the health shit that I went through for, 2/3 of my life, longer,
Yeah.
before I found out just what to eat. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Simple. Because I was similar to you. Like I was a C-section baby. I came quite like 8 weeks early, so I was really small in a humidity crib for like 6, 7, 8 weeks or something. And I was yeah, I wasn't breastfed for very long and then put on formula. And so, growing up, you see indicators of like nutrient deficiencies, and like mine was like a more narrower jaw, crowded teeth, and that sort of stuff. And, as a kid, you're like, oh, that's just how it is. But then like you learn these things and it's like, well, it's nutrient deficiencies growing up, and there's a reason that your body is reacting in this certain way. And I was, nutrient deprived. And to be able to go through that experience, and like you were saying, that you can provide your kids with what you didn't have, that is special. That is absolutely amazing, and to know like the pinnacle of what you can give them so they could be their most optimal self and thrive. Like what's anything better than that in life?
It's been amazing. It's been so hard though. Like, it's really challenging being on the other side of the coin. Like, this, like, it's so hard. You feel quite alone in it because 100-fold this is what we are meant to eat. Like, that this gives us everything. And you have the understanding about what vegetables and fruits and other foods are taking from us. And you're trying to tell people and they don't believe you, or they think you're a bit loopy or whatever it is. And then you get judgment from your family or judgment from your friends, or and it has caused like full falling outs between relationships and friendships. But what I've done is just stood really, really solid in that I am doing the right thing by my child, and I don't care what you think about me or what backlash I'm going to get from this, because this is right. And
Yeah.
I'm going to give my kid everything that they need to thrive and nothing else. And if you're not okay with that, then you have to I've had to let go of a lot, because not only did we have that threat initially with the police involvement and stuff, because I didn't want to give my daughter formula, and they were pushing to admit her to hospital and put her on formula.
Mm.
And I had to fight that really strongly. And this is like post birth. I only had a couple of couple of month old baby, I think it was at that stage. And the stress levels were high. And you can see how people get pushed to making these choices, because
Yeah.
they're pressured and you'll make you feel like you're a freak and that you're
Yeah.
going to harm them and that you're somehow depriving them. But you know that you're not depriving them. You're actually giving them everything that they require.
Yeah, 100%. And if like you had the education and knowledge around what a proper human diet was at that point. But like you were saying, imagine listening to, these experts they tell you, hey, here's what you need to do, sure. And they're pushing formula over breast milk at times, which is absolutely nuts. But then you see where that education's come from, and that by 2030, the baby formula industry is going to be $150 billion US industry. So it's like, of course, when there's money to be made, there's corruption to be had, and it all makes sense. And yeah, you look, and every formula has seed oils in it, and it's in America, I believe it's by law that you've got to have seed oils in it. And how they were talking about, because a lot of mums taking so many omega-6s and linoleic acid from like breast milk samples, they're finding high omega-6s. So they're using that as a reference point to put more omega-6s in baby formula. It's just this like perpetual cycle. And if you didn't have the education around that sort of stuff, you would just say, oh yeah, sure, no worries, I'm doing the best for my baby, which is absolutely nuts. But this is like, we're in a time where kids are like sicker than their parents, like kids are yeah, I don't know, chronic disease only elevating dramatically.
It's so frightening. And I'm running I run different things. So I've run some different carnivore and nutritional programs with obviously Professor K and by myself, and I've been running one sugar stoppers course. And
Cool.
it's not even carnivore. Like, it's for the people that aren't ready for that whole piece, but they want to first give up sugar, get over that piece, and then, so on and so forth. But I was giving them some stats the other day in one of the classes, and it's so scary that in the 80s we had a maximum of 10 to 12% chronic illness in children, and it's 54%. I literally just about blew my head off when I read that. And you know it because you can see it. How many
Yeah.
kids have cancer? Like, so many. More than 2/3 of a 5-year-old's class will be pre-diabetic, and
Oh,
at 5 or 6. Like, it's alarming, and we are not going to see the impact of this for another decade or two.
yeah.
It's the frightening thing too. It's like, we've had processed foods for how long, but we haven't seen the impact of those because they haven't been around long enough.
Yeah.
It's like phones and devices. That's another whole, thing. Then the artificial lighting and
Mm-hmm.
brain development and, just all the things. It is quite frightening. And to be a parent in 2024, you have to be so well educated, well
Oh,
researched in lots of different ways. You've got to be really strong in your convictions. You've got to be able to deal with the backlash or the public abuse or whatever you're going to get.
yeah.
It's a minefield, but what we can see is that whatever we've been doing has not been working. What came about in the 80s, it was like, processed foods, da 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 da, through the wazooza. Now we have like 5 times the amount of chronic illness in children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Classifying the names of things like adult fatty liver disease. They've got rid of the adult, and now it's just fatty liver disease because they're seeing it in children. And
Yeah.
it didn't happen except unless you're an alcoholic who'd been abusing his liver for however many years, you'd see adult fatty liver disease. Or because we just didn't have the exposure to the fruit juices and all the stuff. Because whether or not people want to believe it, and this is a real touchy subject for a lot of people, is that alcohol and sugar is metabolized through the liver the same way.
It's the same thing.
Fruit, or you have
Mhm.
a shot of tequila, there's going to be the same damage done on your liver. And we don't want to think that because we're told, our kids need fruit, our kids need these things, and we're giving them. And now we've had to recategorize a whole bloody disease to include children.
Yeah. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And as you were speaking then, I'm thinking like, well, this is a really wild time to be a parent, like to be bringing up a child here, but it's also maybe one of the best times because we've got so much information, so much knowledge, and it just reminds me. I had a friend, they've just had a newborn, and they sent me a picture, and it's just red light at night on the baby, and they're like, blue block a baby, start them young kind of thing. And I know it was amazing, and to be educated about, like you were saying, like the artificial lights, how that's affecting our mitochondrial health, non-native EMFs, like our laptops and devices, and also Wi-Fi, all sorts of things, and obviously our diet, like we've been talking about, species appropriate diets, and realizing like there are so many layers, but once you do step into this world, it all sort of comes together. It's you've got obviously sunlight. We need sunlight. Don't be on your phone all the time. Eat a species appropriate diet. It's sort of encompassed in that same sort of little beautiful package with a bow. And I feel like once you step in and you start learning about carnivore, automatically in that same sphere, people will be talking about the artificial lights and talking about grounding and all these sorts of things. So I feel it is a wild time, but it's also a great time. But you still got to be battling, the other the other parents and how they're parenting and their opinions, and which can be one of the hardest things, other people's opinions about your choices. Because I remember when I was eating crap food, pizzas and chips and biscuits and that, no one batted an eyelid. But as soon as I start eating only meat, they freak out, and then all of a sudden they're worried about your health. And it's like, well, no, I'm just confronting you about what you believe is to be true. And I've almost like, I don't know how to explain it, but like lift the rug underneath your feet to be like, well, maybe the choices I've been making isn't right. Maybe just because I'm shopping in the health food section doesn't mean it is healthy for me, you know? And I don't know. I feel like there needs to be people like yourself to sort of lead the way and show people that, lead by example, because that's the only way some people are going to listen, you know, because you can, like we were saying at the start of this conversation, you can be like, hey, oh, look, you're amazing. You're looking fantastic and great. But, oh, what are you doing? Carnivore diet. Oh, where's your studies for that? You know, you're still gonna cop that. But it's like, you do that for 5 years, 10 years or whatever, and people see you thriving and flourishing. It's like, well, maybe they're onto something here, you know?
And that's what I'm betting, is that in another decade, it's going to be so obvious, like so obvious. Because at the moment, people get quite surprised by my age. They get surprised by the fact that I've got 3 children. Like, already people are a bit like, oh my God, really? I went to a 40th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I
Oh,
was,
happy birthday.
oh no, it wasn't my
Oh,
birthday. I'm 41. I had my 40th last year.
no way. Oh, amazing.
So I went to a 40th this year, and I was talking to this guy, and then I said, oh, I knew your mum when she was a teenager. And he just looked so confused, and he was like, what? He goes, no, what are you, like 26, 27? I was like, I'm 21. And he's like, what? And you just could see the absolute shock, because so it's already starting to be a little bit more obvious. But yeah, another decade, it's going to really show itself. And then we won't have to be going, look what this is doing, or, you know, because people will be coming to me going, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I don't care if you say carnivore, I'll do whatever you tell me to do right now.
I want to look that good, damn it.
Give me some of whatever you're doing, and it will get easier. But at the moment, it's just writing it out, and just understanding where people are at as well. And I did go through a big part of feeling really isolated and alone in this, and it's not good for any of us. And I would give that advice out to anyone in the carnivore community, is that when you are in this and you are learning about how plants are taking from our healths and all the havoc that they create in our bodies, just know that you're not alone in this, and it's normal to get a pushback, because like you said, people are just comparing to themselves. What they really are doing is just mirroring back whatever they've got going on in their own lives. And you know that you are doing the right thing. And I like to take it really simply back to nature. Like you said, when you look into this, it fits together in a nice little nature package. Like, I do think that with all of the parts, like if we were an animal and we were a lion, for example, you know, you would wake up with the sunrise. You weren't in these artificial boxes. You were on the land. You'd be on the land. You'd wake up with the sunrise. You might move and stretch a bit. You might play a little. You'll go hunting and get some food. You might have a nap, like all of the normal meant to be. And that's what we're meant to do as humans. The sun sets, we go to rest, you know, all the things. And so the more we are living in harmony with the way that we were meant to be before all of the infrastructures, the more health that you're going to get. And that is sunrise, sunset. That is daylight during the day. It's getting all the different UV and gamma rays. It's, you know, it's great having these devices that we can use to block out different blue lights and artificial lights and stuff, and these different devices that we have like this to block the EMF that I've got all over, you know, like we can have these things. But if we take ourselves out of that and we don't need to use these things because we don't have artificial lights or we're not using technology, then it is very much living in tune with nature. Because all of these things, even the grounding sheet that I've got on my table here, they're all just health hacks. They're all just things to support your health, but it isn't necessary or it isn't a requirement in order for you to be healthy to do those things. Like, just get outside, be in contact with the earth, eat the right food, play is a big part that got lost in nature. Like, we need to play, connect with other humans, and And the more that we can live like that, the better, because that's also nervous system regulation and health. And that is a big part of the pie that, again, it's like really misunderstood. And that's where I specialize. So I don't know if you know this, Scott, about me, but I specialize in a rare form of neuromuscular based therapy.
Wow.
I learned that about just over 12 years ago. And what I learned about the nervous system and the brain and the body is that everything is connected, as we know. But your nervous system is essentially in control of all of the parts of yourself that you don't think about. So your heart beating in your chest, your lungs breathing, your digestive system working, your blood sugar levels regulating, all the hormonal responses. We don't think about those. We're not like, okay, beat, beat, beat. These are autonomic responses that are happening without our conscious awareness, and that is controlled by the nervous system. And so that makes sense that even if we're eating the right thing, if we're putting it into our body when we're dysregulated or we're in defensive states of nervous system defense, then we won't be able to absorb and digest the food that we're putting in, even if it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's where things get a little bit like extra, because
Yeah.
I'll have carnivores that have been carnivores for 5+ years, and they can still just eat a freshly cooked piece of steak because the histamine levels will give them reactions and immune responses.
Yeah.
It's like, but hang on, I'm eating steak. Like, why does it matter if I cooked it yesterday? It shouldn't, we should be able to deal with that. And so that's where my area of expertise is on the nervous.
That's fascinating. I love that, because there are layers to this game, and I was the same. I thought when I first stepped into this world, I thought carnivore diet was the way, the only way, and I'll heal myself instantly. But my circadian rhythm was out of whack because I had artificial light at 9 o'clock at night bombarding me. I'd never really went out and seen the sunrise, like all these sorts of things that it all adds to it. And it's like you were saying just before, it's very simple when you really think about it, because it's all these natural sort of things that we've done forever. It's like, it feels good to watch the sunrise and the sunset. It feels nice to be sitting on the ground barefoot, with friends, joking around, playing, climbing a tree, whatever you're doing. It feels right. And there are different aspects to I guess it depends how sick you are, right? And there are different aspects to healing, but it isn't very complicated unless, like, you can get your PMF mats, or I don't know, like I've sort of stumbled down the rabbit hole of deuterium depletion and all these sorts of things, so that you can really nerd out on some of these different things, but overall it is pretty basic to get you there. And some people might not realize how powerful and how healing grounding and watching the morning sunrise for half an hour can actually be. Like, it seems too simple, it seems too good to be true, and it will revolutionize your life just watching the sunrise. That's it. Bare feet on the ground watching the sunrise. Like, what that does to your health from, I guess, mitochondria up. It's absolutely amazing. And yeah, if you're just stepping into this, for any listeners, it's like, you don't need to overcomplicate it. It doesn't need to be this big scary thing where you're overwhelmed with all this information. Just go back to the basics.
Steps, exactly, one step at a time. And then if you are struggling, like I worked with Sarah Franklin. I don't know if you've come across her in the carnivore community, but she's a functional nutritional practitioner. So she literally is a carnivore nutritionalist, and amazing, right? And so when Sarah came to see me, she was one of those people that couldn't eat anything other than a freshly cooked piece of steak because of her own issues. And she'd been carnivore a really long time. And you'd think, okay, these things should have healed. I should be able to deal with chicken or fish or lamb or something else without getting a response. And what we worked on together was strengthening her nervous system, because it was actually her nervous system's weakness that was creating issues with her ability to absorb and digest her food.
Wow.
So know that as simple as it can be, it's also very freaking multifaceted, and there's lots of pieces to it. So don't give up. Don't feel like I'm doing this and it's not working. There just might be a few little things that need tweaking. From an expert, tweaking a few bits can literally be life-changing.
Yeah.
I had a client start last week and she has been in a world of pain. And I said to her, like, as quickly as things can go bad, is just as quickly as things can turn around. Like, we can feel really hopeless when we've tried all of the things and they haven't worked and we're not knowing what's going on with our body. I'm just plugging in my laptop before it decides to die, but it doesn't want to start again. But yeah, just knowing that there's more to it than you think, and just reach out if you need help.
Yeah. That was a big thing for me growing up, being a worrier, having a lot of anxiety in that, and realizing how much that affected my gut, how that affected I guess so many aspects of my health. Just getting, even though like carnivore really sort of did level things out with like mood, anxiety, depression, irritability, all those sorts of things, it worked amazing. But you can still like, I don't know, you can still just get lost in worry and how much that will affect, like you were saying, how that affects your nervous system. And because I've done stand-up comedy on and off for like 10 years. And so in the midst of my serious health issues, I was doing like comedy shows where I'd be like performing in front of 200 people, and the worry and anxiety that would come from that, and like my gut would feel ruined after some of these shows, even though it was amazing. But the stress and worry that I put on myself and how that affected me, and like you were saying, affects absorption of nutrients, and it's like it's a full system. It's not just like a separated thing, you know. Anxiety is connected to your gut, which is connected to everything.
I feel like they've tried to compartmentalize our health, and you've got a digestive problem, or you've got a da-da-da problem, or you've got it is one system. It is governed by our nervous system and our brain. And so even if we are doing all the right things, we can still end up in a world of pain. One of my new carnivore guys, and he's been carnivore for a long time, and he's like an athlete, and he is in an absolute state. And we were talking before about making sure that you have sufficient fuel in. Even with carnivore people, they still struggle to not think that if they eat too much, they're going to gain. Like, it is so deeply conditioned and ingrained in us that, I've had to try and get this guy to get out of his head space about food because he's not eating enough. So his body is like holding on desperately to the body fat that he has. And he's obviously stressing out his nervous system, and he's in such a dysregulated, distressed state all the time that you can't then regulate your blood sugar. So he's got too much, so he's storing way more than he should be with all the activity and the right food that he's putting in. And he's still got, massive amounts of visceral fat. And it's just like, okay, we just need to calm everything down and make sure you are always in a calm state before you eat. You should never eat when you're on the run or in a distressed state, right? It's going to affect your absorption. So if you're feeling nervous, anxious, then you need to calm yourself before you eat, because otherwise you won't absorb what you're putting in. So just some basic things like that.
Yeah.
It's like knowing that you need enough and you can eat to your full, like eat and eat some more. Because your body will actually be able to tell you how much is enough if you reset those satiety hormones that allow your body to do that. So it takes some time and it takes some tweaking, but someone can go from like an awful health situation to an incredible turnaround in 6 days, in 3 days, and like massive, and it's quite amazing because we think it's really like it's going to take forever to get myself out of this bad situation, but it really doesn't. If you've got the right support and you know where the weaknesses are, then it's just a matter of time of just getting rid of those nervous system weaknesses and then moving on.
Yeah. On that, I would love to get your opinion. So what's your thoughts surrounding like in the like a lot of people in the carnivore space do OMAD, like 1 meal a day, and they seem to thrive on it. And I've been experimenting with OMAD because I just love to keep chopping and changing, seeing where I'm at and experimenting. And over the past 2 weeks, I've been doing OMAD, and I'll have a large meal at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I won't eat again until that same time the next day. And I'm quite active. So the other day I did, just for example, it was about a 26-hour fast, but I did sauna and cold plunge back and forth for like 2 hours. I do sports climbing. So I had a 3-hour climb. My energy was through the roof. And then I did a bit of weight training afterwards, and then I ate. So a lot of energy exertion, a lot of output, but I felt great. I felt pretty zen. I felt like I could have kept going, but I'm like, oh no, it's been 26 hours, dude. You're gonna have a kilo of meat right now. Let's go. And yeah, so what's your opinion? I know everyone's probably a bit different, and because I go from like having 3 meals a day sometimes. Most of the time, when I'm not experimenting, I'll eat 2 meals a day, probably mid-morning and that sort of later afternoon, and that seems to be ideal for me. But what do you think about people, say, experimenting with 1 meal a day and maybe not being in the right state, and how do you know, and all that kind of stuff?
So the big question for most people that want to look at eating OMAD is, can you get enough for your energy requirements from one meal alone? Because for me, I couldn't do it. I can't physically fit in enough food because of my capacity of my stomach to get in enough for what I am required for my energy requirements. So remember with OMAD as well, OMAD is categorized as within an hour. So you could eat at 7 o'clock, I don't know, I'm just talking, whatever, 7 in the morning, and then you could eat again at 8 a.m. and that's still classed as OMAD, but
Yeah,
you fuel it. So like you can split it, even though,
I do
So,
that sometimes. Yeah.
so one is like, can I get in enough? That's a big question, because for a lot of people they can't, and therefore it's not going to be that good for them. The second thing is obviously, what is your state when you're eating? So if you're in a distressed or stressed out state, you do not want to be putting fuel in your body. And so symptoms or signs of distress, most people can tell. It's usually increase in heart rate. You might have some tightness or tension in the chest. You might have a bit of a funny tummy, or you can just feel that you're just not in a calm and neutral state, right? So just tapping into where you're at. And if you are feeling a bit all over the place, just regulating yourself. And that can be through different methods, and it depends on what state you're in. So if you're in fight or flight, or if you're in a free state, you're going to do different things to take yourself out of those states. Like it's not the same blanket brush for both. So it's knowing where you are and then regulating yourself before you eat. And so with neuro reset technique, which is what I specialize in, which is the neuromuscular based therapy, you can actually test your system in real time and see what state you're in.
Wow.
I love that because it takes all the guesswork away, and I don't have to be like, oh, I think it's this. It's like, okay, let's have a look. Oh, yeah, you're there. Okay, cool. Now you're there, you do this, retest it. Okay, now you're here again. Cool. Now you can go and eat. And it's really easy. And you do that. I predominantly get people to test that 4 times a day. So they would check it when they wake up, because the way you walk through your life, or what you do, you want to make sure that you're in a calm, regulated state so that all your processes can work. You want to do it before you go to sleep, because again, if you're dysregulated by your sleep, then while you're sleeping, your detoxification and regeneration that happens while we're sleeping won't happen properly because you're dysregulated. So it's like making sure that things will work and making sure you're in the right state before they do their thing. So before you sleep, when you wake up, before you eat, and any guesses what the 4th time for testing might be?
Mm. Tell me.
Movement, exercise. So if we load or exercise when we're in a fight or flight state, we're in that defensive state, we're already like ramped up, we're in a sympathetic state, and then we go and exercise, it's going to exacerbate that state. You're going to go further into that state. So actually, if you're in a fight or flight state, you want to calm your nervous system back down before you then go and exercise, because otherwise you're going to push yourself further into that state.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with exercise. If I go to squat or load my joints, but I'm dysregulated, I'm going to have an increase in my cortisol levels. I might store more body fat. I'm going to break down tissues. Like exercise isn't always perfect. It's not always applicable. If you're in the wrong state, then you shouldn't be exercising. or you regulate yourself and then you apply load. So it's all about like, you really get to know yourself on such a really deep level, and it's not psychological and it's not spiritual, it's embodiment, it's your actual nervous system's non-conscious, how it is, what it perceives a threat to be, and what state you're in as you walk through your day. And then as you start learning what state you're in and regulating yourself, oh, it's life changing. It's a game changer.
It all just balances out, right?
But
Yeah.
then you find people that like Sarah who can now eat any meat she wants. It doesn't have to be freshly cooked. You know, we just had to strengthen her nervous system. We had to do some things. She was doing all the other things. She had the blue blockers and was doing the bits and bobs. And I was like, right, okay, let's have a look at your nervous system. And sure enough, that was where the weakness was. And then we just went through and strengthened all the pieces that needed some support.
Do you find people need to I don't know, practices like meditation obviously help on that, or do you reckon like
If you're sympathetic, yes, it's going to bring you down into a calm state by doing some kind of breath work, depending on the breath work, by the way, because obviously we can go up into vagus, into ventral or dorsal, depending on the way that we breathe. Because think about this is
yeah, like the Wim Hof method might not be a good thing
exactly. So,
if you're stressed out.
but yes, breath work absolutely can bring us into that calm parasympathetic state. Vice versa, if we're in that low dorsal state and we're feeling like on the floor, low freeze state, we actually want to exercise, get our heart rate and our blood pressure up to actually take us out of that state. So it's about knowing where you are and then knowing what to do to get back into that regulated state, because in that neutral zone is where we process. It's in that neutral zone is where we heal. It's in that neutral zone that our body can do all the things it needs to do.
Wow.
If you're not there, it won't do it. And I had a real big wake-up call last year. I had my very old 20-year-old breast implants removed.
Mm-hmm.
Carried half my life around, and it poisoned my body from wearing them.
Yeah.
And I was eating perfectly. Everything was still the same. There was nothing that had changed. And I literally blew up I was about 5 kilos almost overnight. But I looked pregnant. I couldn't fit any of my pants. I had like one stretchy skirt that I could fit. I actually even took a pregnancy test because I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And it was such a wake up. It's like, you know, when you ate that thing and your body was like, no, don't eat it. It was like the same thing. It was like my nervous system was so dysregulated that I couldn't heal. I couldn't regulate my blood sugar, which means I was storing. And nothing had changed. And I was like, it was such a big wake up smack in the face that your nervous system actually governs and dictates all of your body things.
Wow.
And if it isn't happy, then things won't work. And it doesn't matter if you're doing all the right things and you're grounding and you're wearing your blue blockers and you're eating steak and you're like, yeah, and then still you're suffering.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I get. They're like, Jess, help me out. I'm like, cool, right. We just needed to sort out your nervous system, tweak a few bits, and away you go.
These little hidden well, they're not little, but these sort of benign things like amalgam fillings were a problem for me for a long time. You know, I had them since I was a kid and I didn't think it was, you know, anything to think about. But then you learn that you've got heavy metals leaching into your body, you know, like constantly. And yeah, like, you know, you think, how many little things like that, like get breast implants or whatever it is. And it makes me think about operations where people get like foreign, like, I don't know if it is the same, but you know, like, you know, metal knees or something like that. It's like this foreign thing, like that, would that have an impact on, you know, your nervous system and stuff like that? It's, I don't know what, yeah, it just, what better way to like be totally in touch with your body than going through this sort of stuff, being able to like check in with yourself and see, how am I feeling right now? Where am I at right now? It's such a self-love practice, but it's also a practical practice because you're allowing yourself to heal and things like that. But it just, yeah, I love this journey because all it is just getting in touch with yourself and in touch with nature and its natural rhythms. Like that's really the point of all of this, you know, back to where we've come from.
Gorgeous. I love this. I love this so much. Like my work is I love my work so much, and I love helping people and really getting to the root causes of their issues. Because, like you said, things can present, and a weak nervous system can present as gut issues, unnecessary body fat, stress, skin issues, like tightness, aches and pains, joint inflammation, like all of these symptoms, headaches, cluster migraine, blah, 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 like all of these things. And what they're showing is just that you've got a weak, poorly operating nervous system. And it can symptomize as all these other things. So then as you start strengthening it and these things start going away and you think, how is this related to this?
Yeah.
That it is all just the wiring, as I like to call it, or the nervous system. Because it makes sense to us, right? If you think of it like a puppet, you've got your dormant puppet, and then you've got the strings and the puppet master. And the strings and the puppet master are what move the puppet. The puppet doesn't move by itself. And so it's the same with humans. It's our nervous system, or the nerves, the wiring, and our brain being the puppet master that actually governs movement and function in our body. But we think it's our elbow. We think it's that's moving it, and it's not. It's your wiring in the brain that's the problem. So if there are tightness, immobility, weaknesses in your body, it is because of your nervous system and your brain, not the physical body that's the problem. And that's a real like head screw to get your head around. Like, because I'd done 10 years in health and fitness and sports before I came across this modality, I thought I knew everything about the body. You know, I was like, oh, this is how the body works. And then when I learned this, I was like, oh my God, it was like a food thing. I had to kind of scrap everything that I thought I knew and then start over. But it's super clear to see, because you can see a muscle be completely weak and feeble, and you might even use some kind of, like, we've got a dynamometer which tests force output, so we could get you to contract and we could test how much you can generate through your elbow flexion, and then we can test it, see if there's a weakness there, treat it if it requires it, and then retest it and see an increase in 5 or 10 kilos of force output in 20 minutes. And think about getting that in the gym. Like, imagine how long it would take you to go up an extra 5 or 10 kilos through your bicep curls. Like,
Totally.
And so then when you see this, you're like, oh my God, it's not the physical muscle that's weak. It's the connection or the pathways to the tissue that is having the problem.
That it's mind blowing.
And if you restore that, yeah, it's so cool.
Like, just thinking on that, you know, in an athlete sort of, like, do you work with many professional athletes that are sort of, because I get a lot of questions on some of these videos that I post, and people are saying, oh, athletes couldn't do this, like their concerns, like, you know, endurance athletes or even strength training, they say that you need carbs for that. Like, what would you say to those people?
Don't need carbohydrates at all. You need the body's adaptability to use fat, though. So if you're not fat adapted and you suddenly cut carbohydrates, of course there's going to be an energy problem, because your body isn't set up to use fat as a fuel source yet. So, you know, without transition, you're going to have issues. But no, once you've transitioned over, you don't need anything. You just need fat and protein. And as you know, our body makes its own carbohydrates. And it being a demand-driven system, we will make as much as is required, no matter what our, you know, sports or whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
So yeah, but what I would say is, like, with the nervous system, is that if you are putting too much load on a distressed, dysregulated system, then you will end up with problems no matter what you're eating. It isn't just the food. Like, with the programs that I do, I work from 10 pillars of health. So it's not just nutrition, it's not just nervous system. There's sleep, and there's stress, and there's circadian, and there's movement, and there's all these pockets of pieces. And my signature program is like a 3-month immersion, and I'll get all up in your stuff, and I'll like tweak on lots of different avenues, because it's not often that there's one big place for the weakness. Often there's lots of avenues that need help.
Yeah. Wow.
The testing is the key because your body will show me. I don't have to guess. I go, okay, Scotty, let's do some testing. And we go through and we look at where the weaknesses are, and you'll see them as well as me. And then we can treat them, and then instantly you can see the change. And like when I saw this, I was a bit like, nothing's instant, right? Nothing, you can't get change like that rapidly. And it does. And you can go through, being super weak and feeble and not able to sense and use an area of your body, and 20 minutes later you are rock solid, and it lasts.
Unbelievable. It would just with the right knowledge and education. Like I know we were saying before that it's pretty straightforward, but it's like it can get complicated.
I know, and like it is just knowing that there's more without being overwhelmed, and it's like a dance, right? It's like, okay, when I work with new people, I'm always frightened not to overwhelm them, because I'm like, think of us as like a computer. Every single input that's coming in through receptors and sensors in our body that's sending information to our brain about my skin or whatever it is that's coming in has the potential to make us stronger or weaker, depending on how our nervous system has been wired up through our life, through our experiences, to whether or not something's positive or negative. So it was interesting before you were talking about all the things you did, and like cold water to my nervous system is a defense. I do not like it. Cold water will put me into a defensive state. And in that state, digestion won't work, blood sugars, all the things will come to a screeching halt. So cold therapy for me would actually make me sicker and less healthy.
Yeah.
So it's about knowing what actually is doing something good for you. So we have other little gadgets, like this is a laser watch. I don't know if you've seen these. And they have like all the different lasers. So they have UV, infrared, amber, blah, 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 blah. So this is a very special piece of kit that you can't buy. Let me just bring it up. Can you see them all?
Yeah, wow.
It wants my skin, but you can see all of the lasers.
Yeah.
So infrared is meant to be great for improving your mitochondrial or your bioenergetics, right? But what if infrared to your nervous system is defensive?
Wow.
Every time you shine a red light on you, an infrared, you're going to go into a defensive state. So it's also knowing that these hacks are not necessarily hacks if your nervous system doesn't like the stimuli. It's about what it is and how it's been wired in. So the cool thing about NRT is that if you have a weakness, say for infrared, we can treat it. So that then you can go and use an infrared and get all the positive regeneration and the mitochondrial and all the different positive reactions from using that stimuli, because your nervous system can tolerate that. If it can't, it will actually make you weaker by using those things.
And do you only find out this if you say get a red light panel and you start using the infrared and you just don't feel,
No, it would be very hard because, again, too many impacting factors to know that would be the one thing. And you got to remember, a mild dysregulation, we go through them all the time. So we go into distress and then back into regulation, into distress and back into regulation. And we're meant to, right? It's if we go defensive that there's a full-blown problem. So you might even just get a little bit stressed from it, but it's not putting you into a defensive state. It depends on your nervous system. But if yours is wired up that it does not like that, then you will go into a full defensive state and everything will shut down. And the only way to know is for me to test you. So I would test you. I take you through a test online where I go, okay, Scotty, do this, do that, test this, look at the response. If it's shutting you down, then we would treat it.
Wow.
Then you can then use your infrared or your or whatever it is that you're using, because it isn't as simple as input in and your body's happy with it. It depends on you. And so like you said before, this can even be our thoughts. It can be your thoughts. You can go into defensive state through your embodiment of your emotions. Like, it's a real big thing. And I could treat cold, right? I could work on my thermoregulation in those receptors so that my nervous system can tolerate cold, and then I could go in an ice bath and it would have a positive impact on my nervous system and on my health. But I don't care that much. And it takes a really long time because you have to do it section by section of, you can imagine, on your body. And I don't care that much to do it. So I just don't do cold water immersion. because I know that my nervous system goes defense.
Yeah.
Just knowing yourself, knowing what you're doing is actually having a positive impact, because you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on these red light panels. And I'm not going to lie to you, I haven't met someone yet that infrared doesn't shut them down.
Yeah.
Nobody. So I'm
Wow.
like, well, what's the point in going and spending all this money on these, these biotech things if it's going to have a negative impact on your health?
If it's going to make you worse, like, and it just goes back to the start of the conversation where taking supplements to try and heal things, but the supplements are actually making you worse. It's the same thing. You spend all this money to try and get better, but you're actually going backwards. It's so frustrating.
So frustrating, eh? And like you and me, people that have been, often people that are using these things are because they've been looking to feel better. So they're like, come on, what's going to work? Where's the missing thing? The cool thing about my job is your body will show me. So I can go, okay, let's have a look at what's cold like. Okay, let's have a look at what's infrared like on your system. Let's have a look at your bioenergetics. Okay, let's have a look at your elbow flexion. And we can do assessment from any receptor that's getting data into it to see whether or not your nervous system is strong enough. And
And
if
so,
not, then you fix it. And it's really easy. You just strengthen it and then you can use that thing.
and so you're saying you can do this. Does this need to be in person or you can do this online for clients?
Yeah. So in 2020, with all the crazy that went on, actually the two good things that came out for me, one was my daughter, Winter, and then the other was that NRT went online. So there are 25 practitioners in the whole world globally that do what I do.
Wow.
And I always thought it's going to have to be hands-on, like that people are on the table, I'm testing their nervous system, we're looking at different inputs. I thought, how am I going to ever do this online? It just, it's impossible. So yeah, in 2020, when the first lockdown happened, and because I was in London for that, our lockdown was before like a lot of the rest of the world. I learned to do this virtually, and it's effective. So actually, Bart K had a really old motorcycle injury from like 31 years ago. So like when he was 19 or something, and smashed up his shoulder. And he is a exercise physiologist. So if anyone should know how to fix himself, you'd think it would be that guy, right?
Yeah.
So he'd done all the rehab on it. He'd done everything that he could do with it. And it was weak and feeble and broken. And he had absolutely zero muscle tissue on it. It was all deteriorated and atrophied. And he couldn't move it. So he couldn't come up here. And at night he had pillows all propped around it because it was super sore. And when we started working together, I was like, oh, let's fix your shoulder. And it would take me about an hour in person for me to treat all of the joint mobility, the joint structures, and all of the muscles of the shoulder. Online, it took me 5 hours because you're coaching somebody through the positions and through all the pieces. But it was just as effective. He had full mobility, full strength and function instantly. His muscles all grown, like can now build because he has recruitment to that tissue. This recruitment is non-conscious. So essentially NRT restores muscle recruitment.
Wow. This is fascinating. I'm just learning about all this. Yeah.
I know. It was the same with me. Like, I'm such a nerd, and when I hear things and they make sense, and I'm like, of course the nervous system governs function. Of course muscle contraction or relaxation, i.e. its ability to shorten or lengthen, is non-conscious. We don't get to dictate how much tone is in a tissue and how much is not in another. Like, that is all non-conscious. And our resting tone of our tissue, i.e. our posture, is governed by the nervous system and brain, which means you can change your posture like that. You can change mobility like that. No stretching, no manipulation, restore recruitment, and your range will change. And it's so cool. And it's just the best job ever because, and I love it when I get really skeptical people in here because I'm like, come, because this is something that's just like worked for some people and then doesn't work for others. Every human that I have touched in the last 12 years has the same response.
Wow.
Strength and function to anybody's body instantly, and they get to keep the results.
Yeah.
And because I've seen it over and over again, I'm like, people are like, oh, can you help me with this? And I'm like, yes. What about my my tennis elbow or my arthritis in my knee, or I've got a spinal cage, or I've got a disc bulge, or I've got a da da da, and I'm just like, yep, because those are all the nervous system and brain, and that is all my avenue. So anywhere in that capacity, we can help people.
And it is massive because some of these injuries and issues have been with these people for years. Like you said, you know, Barcade 19 having an accident on his motorcycle. Like it's, and it starts to define you as a person. It can really sort of infiltrate the mind. And, you know, you identify with these injuries and you start to limit yourself in so many avenues of your life because, well, I can't go hiking because of my knee or da 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 da. And you start to like, which I feel only can make you sicker, you
Yeah,
know? Like if
definitely. Our mind definitely has a huge impact on our body, to the point where we actually did some testing. So Bart came up because Bart's in the South Island, so he's not close to me. So we've done a lot of work together virtually. And he flew in because he snapped his Achilles tendon playing cricket.
oh,
And he couldn't even push up onto his toes, like literally zero. And we did a ton of treatment. He could push up onto his toes pretty much straight away, even with like a lot of tendon damage and all the things. And we did some testing of his hamstrings, and we used the dynamometer, which measures output. And you know, we took the measurements because that's how his brain works, and he wanted to see. And he went up 100-fold in his strength in about 5 minutes. And you know, he knows on a level that how do you achieve that? You can't. It doesn't exist. It's not possible. But
yeah.
you can.
Mm.
And so I love showing people it, because you'll get people that are like, oh, you know, I've had this problem and I've seen every specialist and they've just said I have to live with it. Or, you know, I get people that have got head injuries or concussion issues and stuff. And I'm like, yep, I can help you. People that are getting injections for migraines and cluster migraines. And I'm like, yep, we can help. And it's life changing for people, especially people that, like you said, have been suffering for a really long time.
Yeah, and I guess the skepticism can be even more beautiful because they're set. Here's where their mind is. It's all boxed in. But then when you can change their lives, like that's got to be that extra relief of like, I cannot believe this is real.
Yeah,
Mm.
it really is. And you can see people's like, and because it isn't like food, we don't have to wait 30 days or a week or 3 months to feel and see the changes. They'll see it straight away. And it is quite a head, like you can see their brains are just like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? Because this goes against everything that I understand about getting stronger. I've got to do, you know, repetitions, and I've got to adapt the load, and I've got to do gradual adaptation, and I've got to put repetitive stimuli through. And then I'm saying, no, I'm saying I can make your elbow or your arm or your leg or your whatever instantly stronger, and you get to keep the results. And then I show them, they're like, what is going on? Like I had one guy that I worked with for about 5 years, and he still couldn't quite put into words what I do. So in his diary, he just wrote it down as voodoo. It's just like, oh yep, I've got my voodoo appointment this afternoon, because it is like that. It's like, what
Yeah.
is
Yeah. That's hilarious because I felt like that with the carnivore diet as well. Like, surely this is too good to be true. Like, how is this? How is this real? How is this working? How can I have all these gut issues that I've had for years and years and years all of a sudden start to alleviate within just a couple weeks, but resolve within a couple months? Like, it doesn't make sense. But it's at our fingertips. It's healing. It's at our fingertips.
Yeah. And our body is designed to heal if we get out of the way. That's why we're talking about like using these biohacks. It's not even about that. It's about trying to get back to our natural state. And our
Mm.
natural state isn't in artificial environments with lights that are telling our brain that it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So our cortisol levels are that, you know, like all the things. It's like, although it's very complex, it is just about us being back in touch with nature
Mm.
and
Yeah.
be with the planet and with each other.
Because I see the other end of the spectrum, people going full biohacker mode, like Brian Johnson, that guy that spends like over $1 million on all these different supplements. He takes like up to 100 pills a day. He's vegetarian. He gets the perfect macros, blah blah blah. He's got all these devices like this ab machine that it's like 20 grand. You put it on your thing on your stomach, and yeah, and it gives you like the equivalent of 20,000 sit-ups. And he goes through all, like, check him out, Brian Johnson. It's a trip, but he looks like a ghost. He looks like a pale ghost man, but he's aging. Apparently, his biological age is, I think he's in his late 40s now, but internally he's like 11 or something like that. It's absolutely wild. And I'm like, why go to that full extreme when you can just sort of like go back to where we've come from, what nature, rhythms that are set in place for us, rather than trying to arrogantly override nature with technology, which I think is it's a weird place to be.
Definitely.
Mm,
Oh,
mm.
lots to think on, isn't it? Like,
What?
I honestly could talk health and life and nervous system and nutrition all day long, and I do. This is like
Yeah.
my job 24/7. But it is nice just for people to get some deeper understanding that you can do it. You can heal yourself. Your body has everything that it requires in order to heal itself if we step out of our own way. And then if there are nervous system issues, that you strengthen and resolve those. And, you know, if you're in, I will say, if you're in the UK, go and see a practitioner, because that's where they predominantly are, is in the UK based. There's only 2 of us in the southern hemisphere.
Wow.
There's one in Costa Rica, and then the rest are pretty much in the UK. So if you need help or support, or you want to do online work, there's only 3 of us that do online, because again, it's very complex. It takes a deeper level of understanding and coaching. So there's only 3 of us that do online, but you can also do it online. And it can be as simple as just learning how to test yourself, learning how to regulate yourself, and then just doing it. And then everything that you're already doing suddenly will start paying off.
It's absolutely incredible, because yeah, you can get lost in, oh, this isn't working, and then you can even go back into old patterns, which is obviously going to, keep you in that state. But yeah, don't give up. Don't give up. And even if you're just starting with the carnivore diet, sure, it's good. It can be hard. Adapting to fat as your fuel source can be hard. You might feel tired, or you'll go through these changes, but it's all so worth it. It is all so worth it, and getting up early to go watch the sunrise. Who cares if you're tired? Go watch that sunrise tired, get your feet on the earth, and you
Oh,
will thank yourself.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Ah, it's been such a pleasure. I've learned so much. Thank you. I love it. I love this conversation. It's almost been 2 hours, and it's just gone by like that.
Too. Okay. Amazing. Well, we'll leave it there. But if anybody has any questions, any comments, anything, Scotty and I will no doubt be doing further conversations in the future. So make sure you pop your questions or any of your takeaways below. Make sure you're following us both. Where can they follow you, Scotty?
So my main sort, like, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. It's all under Scotty Brizzle. Yeah, BRIZZLE. Instagram's my main sort of channel. But yeah, I'll be just ranting about the system and yeah, sort of promoting the carnivore diet. So yeah,
Awesome. And we'll see you guys next time.
awesome. Thanks so much.
Is it all right?